Join us for a deep dive into EMR.
Everything you need to know about the method that is revolutionizing the world of trauma.
Okay, so today we're really diving deep into the impacts of trauma on the brain. You shared some really interesting research with us on this, covering things from PTSD studies to even a potential therapy called eye movement release therapy, or EMR for short.
Yeah, EMR is fascinating in a way. It may hold some real clues about how our brains handle trauma.
You know, we hear the word trauma and it feels big and scary, obviously. But where's the line between just a bad day and a truly traumatic experience?
That's a question a lot of people ask. You see, it's not just about what actually happens, but how our brains see the threat. When something feels like it's putting us in danger, so much that our nervous systems get completely overwhelmed, that's when we're really in the territory of trauma.
Okay, so it's more than just spilling your coffee on yourself right before a big presentation.
Exactly. This is about your survival instincts kicking in. Like imagine you're facing some sudden serious danger and your sympathetic nervous system, which is what controls that, fight, flight, or freeze response. It jumps into action before you even have time to really process what's going on.
Okay, this fight, flight, or freeze thing, our research mentions it a lot. What is actually happening in our bodies at that moment?
It's like someone hit the emergency button on your body's control panel, and all of a sudden, stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol, they flood your system, your heart starts to race, your breathing gets shallower, your senses sharpen. Basically, your whole body is getting ready to either fight the danger, run away from it, or in some cases, totally freeze up.
I think we've all felt that deer in the headlights freeze response, and it's not fun. But I think you said that it's actually supposed to be helpful.
Right. In small doses, that's what keeps us safe during a crisis. But with trauma, it's like that alarm bell keeps ringing and ringing, even after the danger is long gone. And that's where the trouble really starts.
Because our bodies stay on high alert, even when we're safe. I can see how that would take a toll on someone. But to get more specific, what does all of that look like in the brain itself?
It seems like traumatic memories aren't processed the same way as everyday memories. Remember that we talked about the amygdala, the little almond-shaped part of the brain? That acts as our emotional center.
Yeah, that's the part that goes into overdrive when it senses danger.
Exactly.
Right.
So when we experience something really traumatic, the amygdala can get so overwhelmed that it actually disrupts the usual way the brain stores memories.
So it disrupts the hippocampus,
Right.
which is the part that files memories away for long-term storage.
Exactly. It's almost like the amygdala, and all the panic throws a wrench in the system. And it prevents the memory from being properly processed and stored by the hippocampus.
So instead of a clear, organized memory, you end up with, what, like a jumbled mess?
That's a really good way to put it. And because these memories are so fragmented, and they aren't really integrated properly, they can resurface in unexpected and often really distressing ways.
Which explains why so many people with PTSD experience things like flashbacks and nightmares, and even those intense reactions to what seem like totally unrelated triggers.
Exactly. It could be something small, like a certain smell or sound, or even just passing thought. And it can trigger all these emotions and physical sensations because those fragmented memories haven't been processed in a way that lets the brain really understand that the danger is gone.
That makes sense. And that's probably why traditional talk therapy, while really helpful for some things, can't always fully address the root of the problem.
You're right. Talk therapy is incredibly valuable, especially for processing emotions and learning ways to cope. But a lot of times, trauma embeds itself really deep in our subconscious mind, below the level of conscious thought. And that's what traditional therapy usually focuses on.
So it's like trying to fix a broken engine by just polishing the hood. You might feel better for a little while, but you haven't actually done anything about the real problem, which I think leads us perfectly into some of these other therapies, like EMR, which seem to work on a much deeper level.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to unpack in the next part of our deep dives. We're going to look at what EMR is and how it might be able to tap into those deeper parts of the brain to help people process those traumatic memories in a whole new way.
All right. You've definitely got me curious. We'll be right back after a quick break. To delve into the world of eye movement release therapy and how it might be revolutionizing the way we think about healing from trauma. So before the break, we were talking about how trauma can almost hijack our brains and leave those painful memories feeling really fragmented and, you know, still very much alive.
Right. And those fragmented memories, that's where we see a lot of classic trauma responses come from, like the flashbacks and the nightmares and that feeling of being on edge all the time.
Yeah.
They all kind of stem from the brain struggling to file those memories away safely.
And that brings us to this idea of eye movement release therapy, or EMR. It seems almost too simple, like just moving your eyes can actually help you heal from trauma. How does that even work?
Yeah, I can see why you'd think that. It's not about erasing memories or anything. It's about helping your brain process them in a way that lessens their impact on you. Remember how we talked about the amygdala? And now it's like that alarm system that's stuck on high alert.
Yeah, because it hasn't been able to hand those memories off to the hippocampus for proper storage.
Exactly. And EMR uses these guided eye movements, which is a type of bilateral stimulation to kind of nudge that whole system along.
So what's the connection? How do you move your eyes and make that happen?
Well, we're still figuring out all the details, but research is starting to show that this bilateral stimulation from EMR might be tapping into the brain's natural ability to heal and reprocess information. You see, when a traumatic memory gets stuck like that, it's almost like a glitch in the system, that emotional intensity. It makes it really hard for the brain to fully process what happened.
So it's like that jumbled file we talked about before.
Exactly. It's in the filing cabinet.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not organized in a way that makes sense. EMR seems to create this environment where the brain can actually revisit those fragmented memories, but in a safer, more regulated way, and those rhythmic eye movements, along with the therapist's guidance. They seem to help the brain create new pathways that allow those memories to be refiled in a way that isn't as distressing.
So you're not changing the memories themselves, but you're changing how they're stored and how you access them.
That's a good way to put it. And as that happens, people often find that the emotional charge around that trauma starts to lessen. The memories might still be there, but they don't have that same power over you anymore.
And I know some of the research you shared showed some actual changes in brain activity after EMR.
Yeah, there have been some studies that show EMR can lead to more activity in the prefrontal cortex, which is that part of the brain that's in charge of thinking things through and making decisions. And at the same time, we see less activity in the amygdala, which is that fear center we've been talking about. And this all seems to suggest that EMR could be helping people regulate their emotional responses much better.
So it's like EMR gives the prefrontal cortex the space to step in and say, okay, that was then and this is now. And most importantly, we're safe.
Exactly. It's not about trying to forget what happened. It's about building a new relationship with those past experiences.
So for someone who's never done this before, what does an EMR session actually look like?
Well, it really varies, depending on the therapist and what the person needs. But generally, the therapist will have the person focus on the traumatic memory, while they're also following a visual target that moves back and forth. It could be the therapist's fingers, or a light, or even an image on a screen.
It's this combination of focusing on the memory and doing those eye movements. That seems to create that shift in the brain.
It seems that way, like you're giving the brain a chance to process the experience in this new way, while also calming down that overactive fear response. But it's not a magic bullet or anything. It takes time.
Right. But it sounds like EMR could be a really valuable tool for people who are working to heal from trauma.
I think so. And it really speaks to this incredible capacity our brains have for growth and change, even after we experience something as difficult as trauma.
It's interesting. We always hear about how powerful the brain is, like it controls everything. But we don't always think about its power to actually heal itself. Especially after something like trauma, it can feel like those wounds are just too deep to heal.
It's true. Trauma can really make you feel stuck. But the research on neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change and adapt throughout our lives, it gives me a lot of hope because our brains are constantly rewiring themselves based on what we experience.
So even though trauma can lead to some of that unhelpful wiring, maybe therapies like EMR can help us rewire those pathways.
Exactly. It's like creating new detours around those blocked off roads in your brain. We're not erasing the past, but we are finding new ways to navigate through it.
That's really incredible when you think about it. We could potentially heal from some really deep wounds just by working with the brain's natural ability to heal.
And what's even more encouraging is, EMR is really just one of many innovative therapies out there for treating trauma. We're seeing promising results with other things too, like somatic experiencing, which focuses on those physical sensations, and releasing trauma that gets stored in the body. And then there's neurofeedback, where people learn to actually regulate their own brainwave activity.
It seems like we're really starting to understand all the complexities of trauma in a way we haven't before. We're moving beyond just talking about it and finding ways to create real change.
I think so. And that's what's so exciting to me. Trauma was shrouded in mystery and stigma for so long. But now, people are finding real healing and reclaiming their lives.
That's amazing. For anyone listening who might be on their own healing journey right now, what would you say to them?
Oh gosh, that's a big question. I'd say first, be patient with yourself. Healing isn't linear, and it looks different for everyone. There's no one right way to heal. So if something doesn't feel right, it's okay to explore other options. Keep asking questions, and never give up hope. Your brain is incredibly powerful, and it can heal.
That's a great message to end on. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
It was my pleasure.
And for our listeners, we hope this conversation gave you a lot to think about and maybe sparked your curiosity. Remember, knowledge is power, and understanding how our brains work is often the first step to making real and lasting change. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning.